Welcome, everyone. Let us now dive into today's recap and go on a journey through this story. Leon Dragonia, once an orphan on Earth, found himself reincarnated into a fantasy world. As he opened his eyes, he was met with the sight of a quiet ceiling and the warm glow of candles, a stark contrast to the LED bulbs he was used to. It was clear that this world lagged behind Earth in terms of civilization. Observing his surroundings, Leon quickly realized that he had been reborn into a fairly wealthy family, a stark improvement from his previous life, where he had died from overwork with no home to call his own. What struck Leon even more was the beauty of the woman holding him, his new mother. Her exquisite appearance convinced him that she must have come from a prosperous family, one that could afford to maintain such beauty despite the more primitive state of this world. For Leon, this new life was already proving to be much more promising than his last. Leon's mother gazed at him with tears welling up in her eyes, overwhelmed with joy that he had been delivered safely. Seeing her emotion, Leon couldn't help but feel fortunate to have been born into this family. He was confident that, with such a loving mother, his future love life would be free of any problems. 3 years later, Leon stood on a stool, gazing out of the window. It was the first time he had seen the world beyond his cradle, and the sight filled him with excitement. The world outside was vastly different from the Earth he once knew, and Leon couldn't help but marvel at how otherworldly it seemed. Even as a child, he could tell that the world beyond his window was incredibly vast and full of possibilities. At that moment, Leon's maid entered the room and saw him standing dangerously on a small stool, looking out of the window. She immediately panicked, fearing he might fall and hurt himself. Rushing over, she quickly grabbed hold of Leon and gently scolded him, warning him not to do such dangerous things. Leon apologized sincerely. As time went on, Leon discovered that he was part of a prominent family, the Grand Duchy, renowned throughout the kingdom. Leon was the son of Grand Duke Dragonia in the Kingdom of Lionheart, a noble title that carried great prestige. By the time Leon turned 8, he had begun training in swordsmanship, preparing for his future role as a knight of the kingdom. The thought of becoming a fantasy knight, just like those he had read about on Earth, filled him with excitement. Leon gazed at his sword with excitement, thrilled by the thought that he would soon be able to wield sword chi and aura. His excitement only grew when he learned that his swordsmanship instructor would be none other than Sir Gothic, the Holy Knight, who had been dispatched from the palace to train him. Sir Gothic, upon meeting Leon, felt honored, believing it was the goddess's will that he had been chosen to teach the son of the kingdom's esteemed Grand Duke. With a respectful greeting, Sir Gothic expressed his pleasure in meeting Leon. In return, Leon politely asked Sir Gothic to take good care of him during his training. However, Leon had yet to realize that his path to becoming a swordsman would be far more challenging than he had imagined. Years later, at the age of 14, Leon was struggling through his grueling training, dragging a massive rock behind him. He muttered complaints under his breath, thinking that Sir Gothic's training was so intense it bordered on child abuse. Leon couldn't help but wonder if holy knights were actually monsters disguised as humans. Through this harsh regimen, he began to understand that becoming a holy knight required immense determination, hard work, and unwavering dedication. Just then, Sir Gothic called out, informing Leon that he had one more lap to go before completing his training for the day. Every day, Leon had to complete various training quests. To become a knight of the kingdom, he needed to gain experience, earn honor, and ultimately be chosen by the Holy Grail to drink the holy water. Additionally, as the son of the Grand Duke Dragonia, Leon had to master all the knowledge and responsibilities required of a future Grand Duke. During one intense training session, Sir Gothic swung his sword at Leon, reminding him to always keep his focus on his opponent and never lose concentration during a fight. Exhausted, Leon collapsed to the ground, drained from the relentless training. He couldn't help but think, despite his lack of religious belief, that if there truly was a God, he desperately wished to be saved, as he could no longer endure the grueling regimen. 16 years later, on a stormy night, Leon could be seen walking through a dense jungle on his way to one of the kingdom's territories. He had spent years traveling the world, seeking acknowledgement from the goddess. Leon was determined to complete his quest, knowing that only by doing so could he achieve his dream of becoming a holy knight. To earn this honor, he needed the goddess's approval, which required him to continue building his fame and performing good deeds. Only then would she eventually appear before him to grant her blessing. Despite his efforts, having gained significant fame and completed numerous good deeds, the goddess had yet to reveal herself to Leon. This weighed heavily on his mind, filling him with concern that he might never fulfill his ambition of becoming a holy knight. As Leon walked through the forest, he heard desperate cries for help. Rushing toward the source of the commotion, he discovered a small territory surrounded by a horde of orcish monsters. One soldier reported to his captain that there were too many orcs to handle, and everyone feared it was the end of their lives. The soldiers, facing their final moments, prayed fervently to their goddess for protection. In that dire moment, Leon arrived and swung his sword with precision, slaying an orc with a single strike. Furious at the audacity of the orcs to invade the kingdom's territory, he shouted at them, his voice echoing with rage. Determined to protect the land, Leon charged forward and dispatched every orc with skillful strikes, clearing the area of the invaders. At the age of 20, Leon finally stood before the goddess he had spent years seeking. Overwhelmed with disbelief, he found himself in the presence of the deity worshipped by all. The goddess addressed him directly, calling out, "Leon Dragonia, son of Wulfric Dragonia. I will give you a quest to prove your honor and faith." Leon accepted the goddess's challenge, determined to fulfill her demands. After years of relentless battles and unwavering dedication, he successfully completed the quest. At last, Leon was honored with the title of Holy Knight. After becoming a Holy Knight, Leon dedicated himself to a relentless campaign against monsters. Each day, he fought and vanquished orcs, tore apart goblins, and dismantled evil cults. His prowess and dedication eventually earned him the rank of War Knight, granting him the authority to assemble and command other knights. From that moment on, Leon continued his crusade, slaying countless monsters and leading his forces with determination. He personally exterminated 700,000 orcs, including women and children, and took great pride in his achievements. 35 years later, the living saint and demigod, Argon Majesty Lionheart, passed away while battling an archdemon summoned by the Empire. The demons, a new and formidable threat, had begun to wreak havoc, adding to the already persistent problem of orcs. This turmoil highlighted the critical need for mankind to remain devoted to the gods and live faithfully. In the midst of this chaos, the kingdom faced the urgent task of electing a successor to King Lionheart, who had died with honor. At this crucial moment, the goddess appeared before Leon, calling his name and declaring that it was time for him to step up as the symbol of honor and faith for the kingdom. Leon accepted the goddess's call, fully aware of the honor and the burden that came with it. Determined to support his people and the knights who had stood by him, he embraced the position. The goddess bestowed upon him a sacred treasure known as the Lion Heart, which Leon implanted within his own body as a symbol of his commitment to protect the Holy Grail. Thus, Leon ascended to become the Grand Duke Dragonia and the king of the Lionheart Kingdom, fulfilling his role as both a guardian and a leader. 80 years later, the kingdom had endured a chaotic period marked by 3 great wars with orcs. A hunchbacked goblin had evolved into an archdemon, wreaking havoc on the realm. Additionally, the Empire had created further complications by experimenting with dangerous technologies and breaking away from the gods, aligning themselves with a northern cult. Leon understood that these troubles stemmed from the Empire's defiance and their decision to reject divine authority. Reflecting on the chaos, he believed that such rebellion was the result of granting human rights to those unworthy even of being slaves. Determined to address these threats decisively, Leon instructed one of his men to assemble all the knights. He was resolved to eliminate all his enemies through conquest, believing that this was the only way to restore peace and order to his kingdom. Years later, the Empire finally crossed the line when the Emperor, along with 3 million citizens from the capital, committed mass suicide and summoned the Lord of Chaos to bring about the world's destruction. In response, Leon gathered the knights and took up the holy sword, still smeared with the grease of orcs he had slain the previous year. With it, he fought the summoned monster with all his might. At 121 years old, Leon continued to wage an unending war. Despite his best efforts, the world remained in turmoil, defying his wishes for peace. Even with all the holiness he could muster from the continent, he was unable to eradicate the evil completely, resulting in the loss of countless innocent lives. As he fought, Leon reflected on the goddess and wondered how her people were enduring such relentless fear and suffering due to the interminable war. Leon prayed to the goddess, describing the dire situation unfolding before him. He spoke of women consoling their crying children and swallowing their tears, youths desperately were trying to revive the dying flames of resistance, and knights struggling to plant seeds of hope in a blood-soaked wasteland. Despite these valiant efforts, Leon told the goddess that even with the holy sword, the holy spear, and the Holy Grail, his symbols of divine authority, he was unable to halt the overwhelming tide of evil that had spread beyond the horizon. Leon confessed that the burden was too great for him to bear alone. Although his men fought alongside him, their efforts were insufficient to end the relentless war. He begs and requests the goddess for guidance on how to address this seemingly troubling predicament. The goddess answered Leon's prayers, assuring him that she would be with him until the very end, no matter what happened. Upon hearing this, Leon turned to his troops and commanded them to look ahead. He asked if they could hear the sound of the villains across the land, the very ones who had stolen from them and killed their families and comrades. He urged his men to listen closely. Could they hear the enemies who had taken away their loved ones, who sought to violate everything they held dear and strip them of all they had? Fueled by righteous fury, Leon shouted with anger, demanding his men to despise the enemies who had robbed them of everything. He called on them to be enraged by those who believed they could secure victory. Leon reminded his troops that as long as they held on to their honor, they would never be defeated. With a final rallying cry, Leon ordered his men to charge and destroy the enemy, in the name of their goddess, their honor, and the kingdom of Lionheart. Winter had arrived, yet the battle raged on. Leon and his men faced the final confrontation against billions of devils that had overrun the earth. The barbarian slaves of the Lionheart kingdom were sacrificed as meat shields in the relentless clash against the monsters, while the civilian knights, armed with spears and shields, fought bravely and died with honor alongside the valiant warriors of the kingdom. Among the fallen, only one remained standing, Leon. Leon, the chosen champion of all gods and holy temples, stood alone on the battlefield, vanquishing every demon in his path until the very end. In his battle, he tore apart countless demon lords and archdemons, demonstrating to all the enemies the true power of the Holy Knight. Years passed, and Leon, now 256 years old, had finally destroyed the last remaining demon gate, leaving the demons with no escape. In a voice filled with righteous fury, Leon shouted at his enemies, calling them wretched servants of evil, trapped with him in this world. Consumed by anger, he declared that he would kill every last one of them. Terrified by his words, the monsters tried to flee, but it was in vain. Leon hunted them down and killed every single one. Years later, Leon had reached the age of 300. The anguished cry of the final archdemon echoed through the air as Leon struck it down with a single, powerful slash. As the demon fell, a crowd gathered around, their whispers filled with awe and wonder at the sight. They marveled at the mysterious warrior who had defeated an archdemon so effortlessly. Sensing their confusion, Leon spoke to them, urging them to rise, for now was not the time to fall but to stand and fight with courage. One among the crowd stepped forward and asked who he was. Standing tall, his body uncovered and bearing the scars of countless battles, Leon turned to them and declared, "I am King Lionheart, Knight of the Glorious Order, and the chosen agent of the Holy Temple. My name is Leon Dragonia Lionheart." Everyone was stunned at the sight of Leon. Just then, a screen appeared before them, displaying a message. Leon had vanquished all the demons, leaving none behind. However, as Leon fought those final battles, he realized that he was no longer in the world where he had been reincarnated. Instead, he had returned to the world he once called home, planet Earth. After 300 long years, this was Leon's first encounter with Earthlings once more. On Earth, an unidentified magical gate suddenly appeared in the heart of Seoul. Its rank was unidentifiable, causing concern among experts. The Korean Hunter Association, along with the World Hunter Association, urgently requested the nation's largest guilds to participate in a raid on the gate. However, these requests were denied due to the unknown difficulty of the gate, leaving its danger level a mystery. In the end, the government ordered the Korean Hunter Association to enter the gate first, effectively sending them on a perilous mission. Upon entering, one of the association's members, Han Hari, was stunned by what she saw: a naked man standing with a sword in hand, surrounded by the lifeless bodies of thousands of slain monsters. Back in the present, Han Hari, an associate manager of the Korean Hunter Association, was still processing the events that had occurred inside the gate she had entered. Her thoughts were interrupted when her head manager, Kim Jin-soo, called out to her. Noticing how tired she looked, he handed her a cup of coffee. Han Hari accepted the drink and thanked him. Kim Jin-soo then inquired about the situation. Han Hari explained that no one believed what had happened inside the gate. Kim Jin-soo nodded, saying it was to be expected. After all, the gate had been filled with high-level monsters, and on top of that, it was a black-rank demon gate, one of the most dangerous. There had even been a great devil inside. Kim Jin-soo added that it was already a miracle they had returned alive without assistance from the other guilds, but to have cleared the gate and slain all the monsters alone was something beyond belief. And it was all because of one man. The man now sat before them, staring at them with a look of disgust. Han Hari, gathering her courage, asked him if he was a survivor from inside the gate and from the other world. Occasionally, people managed to survive within the gate realms. Over the past 30 years, the gates that had appeared around the world shared certain similarities. The common theme was a world either on the brink of destruction, or one that had already been destroyed. Sometimes, survivors would return to Earth, retaining the incredible strength they had gained in the demon realm. This was why the government made every effort to cater to the needs of these survivors and devised plans to recruit them. Back in the present, Han Hari was explaining to Kim that they needed to recruit the man sitting before them, as he possessed incredible strength. Kim agreed with her and added that even an A-rank hunter would have to risk their life to fight a high-ranking demon, yet the man in front of them had killed the great devil with a single attack. The monsters that even the most skilled S-rank hunters feared were slain by this man in a single strike, and not only that, he had completely overpowered them. Kim then expressed his concern about the significant cultural differences between them and the man. He thought to himself that the way the man spoke suggested he might be some form of royalty or nobility. Han Hari reassured Kim, saying she could sense from the man's voice that he was a genuinely good person. However, little did she know that this assumption might not be accurate. Inside the interrogation room, the man's furious shout shattered the reinforced glass, sending fragments flying. Everyone present was stunned, as the glass had been designed to withstand even the force of monsters but had been effortlessly broken by the man's voice. Kim turned to Han Hari and asked if she still believed the man was a good person. Doubt began to creep into Han Hari's mind as she questioned whether her initial impression had been accurate. 15 minutes earlier, Leon, who had just returned to Earth, felt the planet had become strangely foreign to him, despite being his original home. He reflected on how this was to be expected, given that during his time on Earth, he had been an orphan who toiled through his 20s and eventually died from exhaustion. Afterward, Leon was reincarnated into another world, where he became a king and knight, ruling a kingdom for over a century. Following his conquest of the demon realm, he spent an additional 200 years hunting demons, totaling 300 years in all. Leon found it a small comfort to still retain some memories of his earthly past. Leon then considered that revealing his identity as an Earthling would be disadvantageous. Instead of presenting himself as an Earthling who had died from overworking in his 20s, it would be better to be recognized as a knight who had lived for 300 years in the other world. As Leon pondered this, he was interrupted by an interrogator sitting across from him. The interrogator addressed him by name, Leon Dragonia Lionheart, which irritated Leon. He insisted that the interrogator refer to him as, Your Majesty. The interrogator, initially confused, complied and began addressing Leon as, Your Majesty. Leon wondered whether the interrogator was simply accommodating or if the government was being particularly cautious with survivors like him. The interrogator then explained that the world Leon had come from had made contact with their world. He asked again if Leon was indeed the one who had defeated all the monsters, to which Leon confirmed he had indeed vanquished them all. Leon raised his voice and asked if the interrogator had already forgotten his earlier instructions. The interrogator, puzzled, inquired what Leon meant. With a tone of pride, Leon declared that he had eradicated the evil species and upheld the honor of the knights. Leon then abruptly ordered the interrogator to become his temporary secretary. He informed the interrogator that he was now entrusted with the privilege of documenting this glorious event. The interrogator, taken aback and bewildered by the unexpected turn of events, struggled to comprehend the situation. Leon then shifted the topic and inquired whether there were no etiquette rules for treating royalty in their world. The interrogator, now in a panic, realized that Leon's comment implied he was hungry and demanded food. Quickly grasping the situation, the interrogator grabbed his phone and urgently ordered a meal to be prepared for Leon. Leon then asked the interrogator to explain the world he was now in. He thought to himself that he needed to understand what had happened to Earth during his absence. The interrogator assured Leon that he would provide a detailed explanation about the current state of the world. The interrogator began by explaining to Leon that the nightmare had started suddenly 30 years ago. Gates began opening all over the world, unleashing monsters and demons. Since then, humanity had been in a constant state of emergency. He continued, saying that after enduring significant losses, they had discovered that each gate came with a specific theme and a clear quest. If a gate was left unattended, it would lead to a dungeon break, resulting in a massive invasion of monsters on Earth. After explaining the situation to Leon, the interrogator got up and informed him that the meal was ready and he would go retrieve it. While the interrogator was away, Leon remained seated, reflecting on what he had just learned about Earth. He noted that the situation on Earth was quite different from what he had experienced in the other world. In his previous realm, demons would invade uncontrollably, like mushrooms after rain. However, Earth had gates with specific themes and quests. Leon speculated that this might be a deliberate effort to prepare humanity through trials for impending challenges. At that moment, the interrogator entered the room, greeted Leon as "Your Majesty," and announced that he had brought the meal. Leon took the food and examined it, recognizing it as xiaolongtang, a bone broth simmered for hours, garnished with salt, pepper, and accompanied by crunchy kimchi. Leon remembered his time as a laborer on Earth and how xiaolongtang had been a comfort food for him. He knew people often preferred familiar foods over new ones, but he fought the urge to let his mouth water and declined the meal. Curious, he asked the interrogator what the food was. The interrogator explained that it was called xiaolongtang and was known as the soul food for peasants. Upon hearing that the food was associated with peasants, Leon erupted in anger. He was enraged that they had dared to insult the glorious Lionheart name by serving such humble fare to the king of a kingdom. Leon shouted, demanding to know if this was how they treated royalty from another realm, serving them mere peasant food. The interrogator, seeing Leon's fury, was struck with panic and fear, unsure of how to respond. He attempted to explain that he did not intend to show disrespect, but Leon was in no mood to listen. He ordered the interrogator to leave his presence immediately. Leon reflected on his remarkable past. He was a royal from the otherworld, a proxy for the gods, the guardian of the Holy Grail, and the wielder of the Holy Blade and the Holy Spear. He was Malice, the Lord of Chaos, and the ruler over the 23 great devils, the arch-nemesis of demons who had slain millions. He was the very embodiment of the 300-year war and, ultimately, a returner who had once been an Earthling. Upon returning to Earth after 300 years, Leon perceived the world as disarray, attributing this to the lack of proper religious faith. He believed it was his duty, as someone of royal lineage, to enlighten the misguided inhabitants of Earth. Despite his return, Leon remained a Night King and was determined not to be treated as just another ordinary person. After a few moments, Leon was seen enjoying a high-quality steak and appeared quite satisfied. Kim Jinsu, observing Leon, wondered how he had been able to recognize their dishes, such as chicken and black bean noodles. Meanwhile, Han Hari felt relieved to see that Leon had taken a liking to the T-bone steak and the 1993 vintage red wine they had served. Kim Jinsu instructed Han Hari to approach Leon and ask him a few more questions. Han Hari, feeling apprehensive, confessed to Kim that she wasn't familiar with the historical language Leon spoke. Kim reassured her, noting that Leon seemed to have taken a particular interest in her. He had even complimented Han Hari before, calling her brave, so he might not dismiss her outright. Despite Kim's reassurance, Han Hari remained hesitant but, having no other option, prepared to follow his instructions. Han Hari entered the interrogation room and greeted Leon as Majesty. She apologized for interrupting him while he was eating. Leon glanced at Han Hari and recognized her as the swordsman he had met when he first arrived on Earth. He instructed her to sit down, and Han Hari was relieved to be treated better than the previous interrogator. She then asked Leon if the meal was to his liking. Leon replied that it was not bad and acknowledged the sincerity and skill of the chef who had prepared it. He explained that his frustration was not with the food itself but with their attitude towards him. Leon emphasized that when addressing royalty from a foreign nation, one should show proper respect. He was angered by how the interrogators had treated him as a regular citizen rather than a king. Han Hari, panic-stricken, apologized for her lack of knowledge and for the disrespect shown by herself and her colleagues. Leon reassured her that it was fine now. He then asked Han Hari for her name again, as he hadn't fully caught it before. Han Hari introduced herself once more. Leon informed Han Hari that he was aware of the situation on Earth, including the appearance of demons. Han Hari confirmed this. Her primary mission was to recruit Leon into the Hunter Association. Even if he did not join the association, it was crucial to persuade him to align with their country. Everyone was counting on Han Hari to make this happen. Han Hari then told Leon that, with his royal permission, the South Korean government would provide him with protection and support from that point forward. The motive behind the 21st century intelligence war was to recruit survivors like Leon. Despite promises of support, it was crucial to prevent such individuals from aligning with other nations, placing immense pressure on Han Hari. Leon then spoke, stating that as long as he was settled in this world, he felt a duty to go to the battlefield. He added that, as an honorable knight, it was only right for him to fight. Han Hari, excited by this declaration, eagerly asked if he would join their Hunter Association. However, at that moment, Leon abruptly declared that a king could not serve as a soldier in another nation's military. He further announced his intention to establish a new order of knights in this world. Han Hari was left stunned by Leon's words and could only nod in agreement. After a few moments, Han Hari found herself in a different room with Kim Jinsu. She asked him what the higher-ups had decided about the situation. Kim informed her that the higher-ups were willing to offer Leon full support and any assistance he required. They were relieved that he had not aligned with another country or a large guild, and instead, had stayed with them. Han Hari was shocked to learn that the association, affiliated with the government, had to defer to Leon and agree to his demands. In frustration, she blamed the situation on the large guilds, who flaunted their wealth and power. As they were conversing, the sound of sirens blared, and a message appeared on their phones, warning them of a dungeon break in the Honan Plains. Kim, visibly alarmed, told Han Hari that if the dungeon break occurred at a granary location, it could disrupt food production and cause significant problems for the country. Han Hari questioned why a dungeon break had happened in that area, especially since it was only an orange-colored gate. She noted that S-rank hunter Lee Yongwan, from the Phoenix Guild, was responsible for overseeing that gate. Given his strength, he should have been capable of preventing a dungeon break in such a location. Kim explained that the dungeon break might have been orchestrated as part of a sinister plan by the Phoenix Guild. They needed to act swiftly to thwart any malevolent schemes the guild might be plotting. Leon overheard the conversation and quickly understood the gravity of the situation. Realizing that they were in imminent danger, he knew he had to take action. He was aware that in all previous dungeon breaks on Earth, the land in the affected areas became tainted, rendering the soil unfit for growing crops. Unlike his previous world, Earth lacked the protection of a goddess to safeguard and purify such areas from contamination. With no divine protection available, Leon recognized the urgent need to address the situation himself. In the Honan Plains, an orange-colored gate loomed, surrounded by hunters standing idly. Among them was S-rank hunter Lee Yongwan of the Phoenix Guild, who was supposed to manage the dungeon break but appeared to be doing nothing as the calamity unfolded. Kim and Han Hari arrived at the scene to assess the situation. Upon spotting them, Lee Yongwan greeted them with a menacing demeanor, fully aware that they were there to confront him about the dungeon break. Kim glared at Lee Yongwan, seething with anger. He was convinced that the Phoenix Guild had deliberately allowed the dungeon break to occur. The Phoenix Guild had been denied a request for tax exemption on their profits from the gates by the Hunter Association, and Kim believed that this was their vengeful retaliation. The Phoenix Guild had already gained significant profits from byproducts obtained from the gates, such as magic crystals and monster materials. Despite this, They sought to evade taxes and demanded exemption from a 1 trillion tax. Kim was outraged by their audacity. Although he knew the Phoenix Guild had reaped ample benefits as a major guild, he was shocked that they would resort to such drastic measures simply because their request had been denied. Kim's fury towards them was obvious. At that moment, Han Hari shouted at Li Yongwan, insisting that they needed to close the gate immediately. It had already been left open for a week, and if they didn't address it soon, the situation would worsen. However, Li Yongwan had no intention of taking action. He claimed that he and his team were too severely injured to handle the gate and therefore could not comply with their request. Han Hari and Kim knew this was a lie. They were aware that Li Yongwan and his team were not injured but were instead using this as an excuse for their inaction. The Phoenix Guild's refusal to close the gate was an act of revenge due to their request for tax exemption being denied. Li Yongwan then menacingly informed Han Hari and Kim that he and his team might attempt to close the gate by tomorrow, but he couldn't guarantee what would happen in the meantime. Han Hari, furious, demanded to know if he had any sense of honor. She warned him that if the situation were left unresolved, the Honan Plains would be destroyed and rendered unusable. Li Yongwan laughed out loud at her outburst. He dismissed her concerns, stating that in this world, justice was defined by money and power. He boldly declared that he would do whatever it took to obtain both and didn't care about the fate of the Honan Plains. At that moment, Leon arrived and interrupted the confrontation. He addressed Li Yongwan, saying that he was both shallow and outdated. Kim and Han Hari were stunned to see Leon with them. Hari tried to call out to Leon by name, but Leon immediately corrected her, stating that she was only permitted to address him by his title and not his name. Li Yongwan, taken aback, demanded to know who Leon was. Leon's anger flared, and he snapped at Li, ordering him to be silent. Enraged, Leon declared that someone as insignificant as Li had no right to interrupt him while he was speaking. Li Yongwan, enraged by being called lowly by Leon, was furious. As one of the 20s rank hunters and a guild master of one of the top 10 guilds, he was deeply offended by Leon's words. Li Yongwan activated his flame ability, threatening Leon and demanding to know if he was prepared to die for insulting him. Just then, Han Hari intervened, urgently informing Li that Leon was a survivor. Li was taken aback and quickly adjusted his demeanor. He greeted Leon with newfound respect and offered a sincere apology for his previous rudeness. However, Leon ignored Li's apology entirely and focused on the matter at hand. Leon asked Kim and Hari to explain the situation to him in detail, as he was unfamiliar with the specifics of the gate. Kim and Hari were relieved and excited to see Leon willing to help. They promptly detailed the situation to him, eager to have his assistance in resolving the issue. Han Hari explained to Leon that they were dealing with a dungeon break. During such an event, a massive influx of demonic energy emerges and taints the land, rendering the soil infertile and preventing crops from growing. She emphasized that the Honan Plains was a crucial granary, and if it were to be contaminated, it would severely impact the nation's food supply, making the situation extremely critical. Hari continued, noting that the spreading demonic energy was already affecting the ground. The only solution was to purify the infection and clear the dungeon as swiftly as possible to prevent further damage. The dungeon needed to be completely eradicated to halt the spread of the contamination. Upon hearing this, Leon grasped the gravity of the situation. He instructed Han Hari to assemble their forces and assured her that, once the Phoenix Guild's deadline expired, he would personally handle the crisis. Hari was thrilled by the prospect, but Leon reminded her that, as a foreign king, he could not engage in military activities on another nation's soil without proper authorization. Leon emphasized that he needed to obtain permission from the nation's king, adhering to the established protocols and rules. He stated that he could not consider himself an honorable knight if he ignored the laws of the land. He urged Hari to follow the process and inform the king of the situation immediately. Hari looked at Leon with a sense of helplessness, wondering why he insisted on involving the higher-ups when he could simply handle the situation directly. Meanwhile, Li Yongwan was taken aback by Leon's response, thinking to himself that Leon's treatment to protocol made him even more rigid than Li himself. In the end, they had no choice but to agree with Leon's demands and sought permission from the president of the country, who granted it. By nightfall, Hari approached Leon with the preparations he had requested. However, She was puzzled about the purpose of the straw doll she was holding. Leon explained that since the land was infected, he intended to use the straw doll to purify it. Hari was confused about how a straw doll could possibly aid in purifying the land. Leon had requested two specific tasks from Hari. First, he asked for a straw doll, and second, he required that the doll be made by women who had given birth. As the dolls were presented for inspection, Leon meticulously examined each one. After touching and observing numerous dolls crafted by various women, one in particular caught his eye. The doll was made by an 89-year-old married woman. Leon was both surprised and pleased with the doll's quality. He told the woman that, under normal circumstances, he would have personally honored her with a medal and a gift. However, due to the urgency of the situation, he could not. Instead, he apologized for not being able to offer more and gently kissed the woman's hand as a sign of his deep appreciation for her work. Leon took the straw doll and placed it on a board. Activating his magic, he announced that the conditions had been met. The onlookers were puzzled, unsure of what the condition was. Leon then took out a cup and began reciting, "Mother of this abundant land. The people of this earth are offering you this doll to harvest. Please receive it." To everyone's astonishment, the cup began to glow, and light shone from it. Moments later, the cup was filled with water. Hari watched in shock as the scene unfolded. Leon continued his recitation. "The sun is rising. A red light is tinting the clouds. A new day is waiting to start. However, the sun that rises today will be a special beginning for this world. I greet Mother Earth." Everyone was amazed as the water droplets flowed into the doll. By the time Leon completed his recitation, the doll stood upright, and within it appeared Demera, the god of life and abundance. Divinity had descended upon the land. Leon greeted the great Mother Earth who had descended before them. He then proceeded to explain the situation to the goddess. Leon told her that the land they were in was being invaded and contaminated by evil forces. He also mentioned the presence of malevolent species and the absence of divine protection. Leon, casting a disdainful glance at Lee, noted his concern that such lowly creatures might defile the goddess's eyes. The goddess responded, acknowledging that ignorance and greed are not always sins but inherent traits of mortals. She then inquired about Leon's plans. Leon explained that blending in among swordsmen was not difficult, but the authority of a conqueror was divine. He pledged to ensure that duty and authority would be on equal footing until a new pantheon arose on Earth. Hearing this, the goddess asked if Leon had any specific requests. She was willing to fulfill them. Leon requested that, since the free citizens of Earth were suffering from the ongoing evil energy, she should heal and purify the land. He expressed his certainty that this was not something she desired, but it was crucial for the well-being of the land and its people. The goddess responded, acknowledging Leon as the head and champion of her temple. She explained that while Earth was not her physical form, she would extend her divinity to it. She would infuse the parched land with her essence, ensuring that everything on this earth would become Leon's ally from now on. Extending her hand, the goddess let a drop of golden water fall to the ground. The moment the droplet touched the earth, a burst of radiant light erupted, leaving everyone present in awe. Leon instructed everyone to observe and learn, emphasizing that this world was now blessed with divinity. As he spoke, the previously infected area was purified, its appearance visibly healthier than before. While the onlookers watched in awe, Leon declared that this act was the righteous duty of a living being. He pointed to the revitalized land as proof of an eternal promise. Lee, seeing the ground had been purified, was enraged, realizing that his plan had been ruined by Leon. In his fury, he shouted to the crowd, warning them not to be deceived. He claimed that crops grown with magic were poisonous, asserting with certainty that they were tainted. Leon, upon hearing Lee's claim, regarded him as an ignorant fool. Fuming with anger, he addressed Lee and the others, asserting that the crops were now blessed by divinity and should not be dismissed as poisonous. Lee, dismissing the goddess, insulted her by referring to her as a mere straw doll. This only intensified Leon's fury. He warned Lee that he might forgive ignorance once, but he would not tolerate any further disrespect towards the goddess with Lee's vile words. Seeing Leon's rage, Lee was visibly frightened. He realized that his plan was in jeopardy and knew he had to act quickly. Determined not to let his scheme be ruined, Lee decided to expose Leon's claims as false. He demanded proof of the crops' purification, insisting that Leon cooperate for the sake of the people who would consume them. Lee thought to himself that while they tested the crops, he would find a way to frame Leon as a fraud and salvage his plans. He then informed Leon that he would arrange for an appraiser to verify whether the crops had truly been purified. The appraiser arrived and used his magic to examine the land. When he completed his appraisal, he was astonished by his findings. He exclaimed to everyone that all the crops in the area were now blessed and of A-rank quality. These crops, he declared, had the remarkable ability to cure all Tier 3 diseases and even cancer. The revelation stunned everyone, leaving them unable to believe the extraordinary turn of events. Upon hearing this, Kim instructed someone to fetch a pot from the chief's house. After cooking the rice, Kim was astonished by the results. His stamina recovery rate increased by 100 points per minute, while his magic recovery rate rose by 50 points per minute, with these effects lasting for 8 hours. Kim marveled at how this rice seemed to act as a powerful reinforcer, comparable to one worth 3 million won per bottle. As Kim was still processing this, Han Hari approached him and mentioned that, out of curiosity, she had eaten a bug along with the rice and experienced a substantial buff. Kim and the others were stunned by this revelation. Kim then speculated that if the land was truly blessed, it wouldn't be surprising if all living beings were also affected. The others, eager to experience these benefits, rushed to the fields to search for bugs, hoping to gain buffs from consuming them. The goddess then addressed Leon, informing him that her task was complete and it was time for her to depart. Leon bowed his head and expressed his deep gratitude, promising never to forget the divine blessings she had bestowed. The goddess, before leaving, imparted one final piece of advice, urging Leon to make sure he took care of himself and ate well. With that, she vanished, leaving only the lifeless doll on the ground. At that moment, Han Hari approached Leon and asked how this had happened. Leon explained that it was all due to the divine power granted by the goddess. He then inquired if there were no gods in this world, to which Hari replied that she was unsure and did not know. Leon remarked that a truly proper life and world are established with divine power, and earthlings should remember that. Shifting the topic, Leon told everyone that now that they were all satisfied, it was time to enter the gate. One of Lee's companions approached him, expressing concern that if they left the situation unresolved, their plan would be jeopardized. Lee, seething with anger, questioned where Leon had come from. He thought to himself that, if it weren't for Leon, the government would have had no choice but to heed their request. Lee wished that Leon had perished at the gate, as his presence was now causing Lee significant problems. At that moment, Lee had a sudden idea that could resolve his situation and deal with Leon simultaneously. When one of his companions noticed Lee's intense focus and asked what was wrong, Lee told him not to worry. Lee then inquired whether the gate had been fully raided. The companion responded that it had only been half cleared, with the strongest monster in the dungeon still remaining. Understanding Lee's plan, the companion remained silent. Lee smiled menacingly and assured his companion that Leon and his team was bound to fail in their dungeon raid. Since the only A-rank hunter on their team was Han Hari and Leon was likely a support type with minimal combat abilities, Lee believed they would be severely disadvantaged. He added that the monster inside the gate was formidable and could not be defeated through ordinary means, guaranteeing that Leon and his team would meet their end. That's all for today. If you do enjoy the video, please subscribe, like and share, and also share your thoughts in the comment section.